So, if we now turn to item number 6, which is the Mayor's Report, Council Committee Structure. I think I've got that right, sorry.
Yeah, item 6, that's right.
Where's my meeting run sheet gone?
Item 6, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, item number 6. No, Mayor's Report, Council Committee Structure for the 2019-2022 triennium. And in introducing this paper, which stands in my name, I want to reflect on the significance of setting out the direction for the new triennium so early. I don't think we've ever achieved this new reorganisation of the structure to match both the momentum and the effort that people want to apply themselves to in this term so quickly. And I want to acknowledge all of the staff that have made it happen and turned it around so quickly. Essentially, we had the election on the 12th of October, so the initial results came out on the 12th of October. We only had our inaugural meeting last week, and here on the 31st of October we have an incredible layout before us, and I do like the sort of kind of the summary overview of the document, and in many respects I want to speak to that. If you look at the summary document, then what you'll see is that we have brought together both the existing councillors who've been re-elected and the new councillors, and we've essentially paired the experienced councillors with the new councillors in a leadership framework that I think is going to be incredibly beneficial to how we operate as a team. And I'm really, really grateful to colleagues for the amount of effort that you've made in providing me with the feedback and making yourselves available so quickly in the new term to share with me both your aspirations, your dreams and commitments, still waiting for many of the speeches that you gave last week to be sent to my inbox, but it's I did want to reflect on that when I sat there and listened to every single one of you, there was just such a passion and a commitment to making a difference to our city, and I think all of this bodes very well, and I'm very excited for the future of this term, and obviously the impact that we can make as a council in terms of the future of the city as a whole. So thank you very much for that. So essentially the way that this has been framed, and again looking just at the image, and I can't read what page it is, but if we look at finance and performance was already operating as a committee of the whole, so that is now being continued as a model, and now reflected across the other 3 particularly strong areas of our council structure as it was. So sustainability and community resilience come together, and I think that is a real reflection on how significant community resilience is to ensuring the future of the city, but also to increase both participation in decision making at a wider level, but actually active participation in local communities. That's what makes a difference. We all learnt that after the earthquakes, that when people come together after a disaster occurs and provides that one-on-one support, you suddenly realise that you don't really need council or central government doing stuff for you. You're actually more than competent to do stuff for yourselves, and with support from central and local government, then you can do a lot more. How do we turn that state of the natural response of Christchurch residents in the state of an emergency, how do we turn that into everyday life? and not to abandon communities to do things for themselves, but actually to support communities, to grow their communities so that they can do things together. So I regard this as an extremely important committee that has also got a strong focus on the whole area of climate change and the leadership role that we want to play. Because again, I think as many of us reflected during the campaign, dealing with climate change is not something that central government's going to do alone. It's not something that cities can do alone, and it's certainly not something that communities can do alone. It needs individual sign-up, it needs community sign-up, it needs council sign-up, and it needs collective sign-off across the city, and it needs government sign-off. So, you know, and it's the signing up, it's the ownership, that's what has to really start at the grassroots and work its way across the different layers that exist in terms of making that significant difference. Three Waters, infrastructure and environment, again, the lifting of what are the important issues facing our city. We know that these are important to central government. Three Waters infrastructure has been the subject of a significant review by central government. We're still awaiting the outcome of that review. We need to be well prepared. We've got Section 17A work going on in this space, and the new councillors will get to know what Section 17A represents in the near future. But it does mean that we're doing a deep dive into Three Waters. That's an appropriate piece of language there, but to look at what is the best way for both delivery and for governance in that space, as well as looking across the region to see where the region is best located to do things on a collective basis, but on a shared and collaborative space, which has been the history of the relationship across Canterbury, rather than one that's decided by central government and imposed top-down. The environment, of course, linking that into the Three Waters infrastructure is absolutely core critical. And I know that there's a real desire to see, Ramsar status around the estuary, the Ihutai estuary, and I've made a commitment that I want to understand better what we could be doing to address what was a wrong in our history in terms of Ihutai as well. Urban development and transport, they've got to come together, and I think that we've had to face as a city the reality that we have urban sprawl, but that it is not so much within our urban boundaries but out beyond, and the earthquakes accelerated that, with both Waimakariri and Selwyn seeing significant growth well ahead of predictions, but them combined has included us in the fast growing area, which took us into the future development strategy requirements of central government, a requirement that was introduced by the former government and actually still required to be delivered by the incoming government. So across governments, they're looking at urban development and transport combined. And I think that the combination of portfolios in central government does indicate a really strong commitment, and the public transport futures business case that is very much directed at the combination. So that is a really important committee, and under that we're going to see the district plan working group. I don't know how C, performance and employment, ended up there. Sorry, yes, the district plan working group it's not really one working group. We'll probably put a bracket around that and go groups, bracket, S bracket, because I'm seeing the district plan working groups being established by the committee of the whole to look at specific issues. So, for example, if we're looking at coastal hazards, then you'd want your 3 coastal councillors on there as a matter of course. Doesn't mean they'll be the only ones on there, but you need to have them on there. If they're looking at the Port Hills, then it's going to have to be other councillors. So, and if you're looking at particular parts of the city, these are for the focused areas. Obviously, during the course of the time that we sit around this table, there'll be other issues that we'll want to be referred to the Urban Development and Transport Committee, and then they might consider that a district plan working group might be worthwhile in establishing. I think it's helpful to staff because it means that they're not resourcing a committee that meets on a structured basis, and therefore work is created to fill the agenda. It does happen, and so the idea of task-focused, finished dates, with a natural sunset built into the terms of reference, actually creates a work program that's manageable for councillors and very effective and efficient for the staff as well. Audit and risk management is a standard, health, safety and wellbeing is a standard, and these are committees that haven't been discharged by the election, so they continue on and we can update membership as we go. The Civic Awards is something that exists at the moment and will be a subcommittee. Regulatory performance remains a subcommittee, and I'm just trying to pick out Te Hono Ngā Council, Papatupu Runanga Committee, and C Performance and Employment. They are the sort of the standard subcommittees that we have. The new ones are and new to one extent. The Multicultural Committee is no longer a subcommittee of the. It's no longer a subcommittee of a committee. It's a subcommittee. It's a committee of a standing committee of the council. So it's upgraded right up to formal standing committee status. And there are many challenges, and I think the 15th of March has reminded us of the importance of dealing with a number of issues as a city, and so it's a really important committee that I'm placing a lot of faith in order to make a real difference in terms of the way forward. So the membership of it will, is yet to be fully determined, because I'm thinking that you really want a mechanism to embrace the wider community, and membership of the Multicultural Committee may in fact be one of the ways of achieving that. And I've worked with Councillor Chen to change the terms of reference, so it's far more focused, not so much on people coming along and talking to the council committee, but actually the council committee playing a very proactive role and going out and engaging with the wider communities and looking for the implementation of the multicultural strategy. The Youth Advisory Committee is new, and it's clearly very loosely established at this stage, because there's actually quite a bit of work to do with the Youth Council, with Pacifica Youth Leadership and Transformation Pilot, and a wide range of other community student-based community groups or youth-based community groups. I'm thinking of the Students' Association out at UC and various other organisations. So we've got a couple there named in the chair and deputy chair's role, and to really bring that forward, it is an opportunity for youth to have a real voice, but also to develop that pipeline for those that are interested in playing a governance role in their cities. And perhaps a wider governance role in the nation, to see themselves having a pathway for achieving all that they can achieve. And the last one of the very new ones is the City Momentum one, which I'll chair. The Chief Executive will be our principal advisor in that regard. And I'm jointly chairing it with Councillor Goff. And I think I want to send a message that City Momentum isn't just about the central city, it's about the city as a whole, and that's why I've asked James if he will chair a Central City Momentum Working Group so that it's focused. How do we turn that action plan into the deliverables that will make a difference to the Central City, and then from the wider city momentum, a large number of features, and I want to develop a framework. We've got the international relations work has come into this city momentum, and I really need to sit down with Christchurch NZ and work out how we develop a strategic way of working that makes a huge difference to the city as a whole. We're not just selling a narrative for the city. We're actually inviting people to be part of a story, a transformational story about what a city can and we will be doing as a result of our range of experiences and the way the community has actually embraced those changes, but recognising the challenges that sit in the way as well, because it's not just about taking on those challenges, it's also about recognising that there are enormous opportunities and building on them. We are, I hate saying we're second anything, but we are New Zealand's second largest city. We are the capital of the South Island of New Zealand. The announcement by Christchurch International Airport that American Airlines are going to fly directly from Los Angeles into Christchurch Airport is the best news, best way to start the new term in terms of really thinking expansively about what we can achieve. So the city momentum is going to be all about working in collaboration and partnership right across the board. University's part of that partnership, the DHB's part of that partnership. It's actually seeing ourselves in the leadership role that will transform our city and take full advantage of all of the experiences that we've been through. So that's the sort of kind of the overview of what I've been trying to achieve in this regard. I have some other working groups off this, and I should mention both the accessibility regulatory working group, and I've made this a working group because I want a task completed, and the task is at the moment we meet our requirements under the building code, for example. So we build to code. But is it good enough? Are the standards that are set for accessibility, are they good enough? And so I want this committee to look at whether they are good enough. And we have a sneaking feeling, because it did come up during the campaign, and it has come up here in front of council, is that we have, we've also, if it's not good enough, then should we set ourselves higher standards? And if we should set ourselves higher standards, come back with some advice in that regard, because I think that we're going to find out that we should set ourselves higher standards. They pay off in the long run. They certainly do. So I don't think that it's a cost. I think it's an investment in an accessible city, and that's a positive. And the second thing is, if we think that's so good, should we be persuading central government to make that the test across the country? Because I don't think that they've looked hard enough at some of these criteria for far too long. So if we can persuade them, if we can persuade ourselves that we need to lift our game, then we can persuade them that they can lift their game. And the last one that I wanted to call out was the social housing working group. During the campaign, it was the one area that I made a specific commitment on that I hadn't contemplated prior to going into the election campaign. And I don't normally do that, but on this particular occasion I took advice because I wasn't going to make a promise that couldn't be kept. But one of the keys to making sure that the promise can be kept is knowing where you are, knowing what needs to be done, and monitoring it. And that's what this working group will do. This group has a task and finish. I'm expecting it to be finished by Christmas. And what I want by Christmas, this Christmas, not any old Christmas, but this one, What I want is a framework that enables that momentum to be developed and driven, and that we're able to report on it so that it's very transparent that we're making a difference in that regard, and working very closely in partnership with the Otatahi Community Housing Trust, which is a partner really in this whole process. So what I think we've achieved here is a matching of experience with our new councillors, and almost the partnership and building of leadership capability right around the table. Everyone has a role, everyone has a part to play, and I can just see that reflecting in the quality of the debate around the table, but also the quality of our interactions both internally and externally. I want us to spend a lot more time out in the community, talking to people. That's what I actually like about the campaign. There are elements of the campaign that I don't like, but one of the strongest things that I do like is being out and about and having people engage in a very upfront and personal way. I always find that incredibly gratifying, and it does give you the incentive to know that you're on the right track when you get such positive feedback. So that's the overarching thing. Now, obviously, there's a lot of detail. There's a few bits and pieces and some changes to the resolutions that we've been working on, just to essentially kick things off, but recognising that there will be further changes to be made, that people will want to shift around a bit. The only ones you can't shift around from are the committees of the whole, because everyone sits around the table. And I guess that was another point that I should make, is that the committees of the whole are very much about the importance of all councillors being up to speed with all of the major decisions that we're going to make as a council. Right, so probably what I'll do is I'll go through the recommendations one by one, and just see that people are quite clear about where we are, and then we'll come back and look at how we might vote on them. So the first ones are the committees of the whole. Finance and Performance, Chair Deputy Mayor Turner, Deputy Chair Councillor McDonald. Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee, Chair Councillor Templeton, Deputy Chair Councillor Coker. Three Waters Infrastructure and Environment Committee, Chair Councillor Cotter, Deputy Chair Councillor Daniels, and Urban Development and Transport Committee, Chair Councillor Davidson, and Deputy Chair Councillor Major. I have said to all of the new councillors, you know, if the chair doesn't turn up on the first day, you're chairing a committee of the whole council day one. So please don't be sick on your first day here. That wouldn't be fair. And I do expect chairs and deputies to work collaboratively over the agenda setting, over working with council staff to get the program of work, the work program ahead scheduled. The City Momentum one, I haven't won the argument on co-chairs, but we're going to do co-chairs, but only one of us can be in the chair at a time. That doesn't mean that, but that does mean that either of us can chair and the other can be present. So with a deputy chair, if the chair is present, they have to chair. So this is, I think, a much better model, and it sends a strong signal, and a group of members there to kick the Momentum Committee off, and they may change over time. Then we've got the Civic Awards Committee, and again we've just got a number of councillors working with Councillor Johansson. The Regulatory Performance Committee, Chair Councillor Scandrick, Deputy Chair Councillor Kewen, and three members, again, just to kick things off. The Youth Advisory Committee, because it's going to be a different form of committee and will involve external appointments, I've left that just open with Councillor Galloway and Councillor McClellan to chair and deputy chair, but to work collaboratively with the youth groups and youth organisations to develop. The Chief Executive Performance and Employment Committee, I want this to be a very small committee. I've got myself, Deputy Mayor Turner and Councillor Goff. I probably am open to take another member, but I want to keep it small and focused, just so that we can work collaboratively with the Chief Executive over performance and to develop appropriate employment recommendations, policy recommendations to bring back to council. But again, it's a standing committee of the council. And then we've got the Multicultural Committee with Councillor Chen and Councillor Chu. I've got Councillor Daniels sitting in there at the moment, but again, I will want others to join this, but I'd like the committee to think, even across the three of you, to think collaboratively about how you'd like to structure the committee, working with staff. They'll give you some advice. It's open. It's a good model that we've got. There's an advisory group that needs to be appointed that I think nominations close on the 10th of November. So that's not too far away. And again, that'll give us some time to think about whether, potentially the head of an advisory group could be sitting directly on the committee itself. But it just gives the council, the committee itself, the opportunity to look at what's best. Audit and risk, we already have Kim Wallison as the chair, deputy chair Councillor McDonald, and then the members Dalzell, Turner, Cotter. So there's a recommendation coming from the independent chair that we reduce the numbers of members so that we can be more focused. But we are going to create a much better reporting framework to council, and which will include the chair coming and reporting to the council directly. So, but as I say, we've left it at that at this stage. But again, there is room for a little bit of manoeuvring, but numbers are relatively tight. Health, safety, and wellbeing, Councillor Goff. I haven't put anyone else there. But we just need to, it's an existing committee. It has an ongoing membership. It wasn't discharged, and so that gives an opportunity to look at what needs to be done there. And to Hononga Council Papatipu Runanga, that's again the same co-chairs, and I've asked again Councillor Daniels to join that committee, and I've looked at across the membership to focus on the numbers, so now it matches the numbers of chairs of the Papatipu Runanga. The subcommittees, I've got myself, Deputy Mayor Turner and Councillor Davidson. We're existing members of the committee, so that, and I'm open to one more, and I've got a little bit of more research that I want to do around the terms of reference on that. And the funding committee, reporting to sustainability and community resilience committee. Again, we've just put 3 councillors in there, with Councillor Johansson chairing, Councillor Chu deputy chairing, and one member, just to make up the numbers in the meantime. But we need to do a little bit more work about what delegations the funding committee will have, but that's up to the Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee. Working groups, accessibility regulatory working group, I've talked to that before about what I'm asking them to do. The district plan working group, again, will appoint members to a district plan working group as and when required. Central City Momentum working group, again, reporting, I've already mentioned that. The social housing reporting group I've mentioned. And 2 portfolios, accessibility portfolio for Councillor Kewen, and children, young persons and older persons, the spectrum of 8, 18 and 80 for Councillor Galloway. I am open to further portfolios, and it has occurred to me that sport and rec is one that I probably would like to see, potentially heritage as well. And I know that that there are some councillors that are particularly interested in these areas, and I would like to explore those further, but I haven't included them in this paper at this stage, but I'm certainly open to that. And there will be others that will arise from time to time. I get to be on all of them as I want, and the working groups are task-based with a definitive sunset provision. We're revoking a current delegation for appointing hearings panels under the RMA, and delegating it to the Deputy Mayor and the Chief Executive. And the Deputy Mayor is going to keep a track record of who's being appointed to what, so that we get a sense of balance across the hearings panels, so that that it will build up a body of knowledge and experience around hearings panels. And I think that's a much better system, so thank you for agreeing to do that. And the District Plan Appeals Committee and the Parking Restriction Subcommittee are discharged because they're going into terms of reference for the Urban Development and Transport Committee, and that's the same with 7. And then we're amending references. That should have been tidied up before now, but anyway, that's done. Number 9 adopts the terms of reference, noting that the terms of reference for working groups will be confirmed by appropriate committee or council. Again, I think we're going to have to require a little bit of flexibility around the terms of reference. There'll be something that people will have noticed partway through the process or shortly thereafter that they'll want to change. So we're just going to create an easy way to facilitate changes that need to be made. There's more. There's more. Approves any membership. Approves that any amendments to membership or terms of reference can be referred to the next council or the committee of the whole meeting. So you don't have to wait for a council meeting, whichever first, where full delegations can be exercised to make the appropriate amendments. So if there's something that comes up and you just need to refer it to the next meeting, there'll be one maximum 2 weeks away, and you can get the change made. So we're not going to require a full report, massive, take up of council staff time. We're just going to be flexible and nimble. Love those words. We're going to adopt the schedule of meetings, delegating to the hearings and council support manager the ability to amend the schedule as required. So that again requires some flexibility. We've got we're appointing myself, Councillor Davidson and Councillor Templeton to the the Greater Christchurch Partnership, appointing Councillor Davidson, myself and Councillor Templeton to the Greater Christchurch Public Transport Joint Committee. Now I'm not necessarily going to stay on there, I haven't decided, but I want to stay on there just for the short term while we get things moving. I'm not 100% sure what the best way forward is there. Appoints Mike Davidson as the council's representative on the Canterbury Regional Transport Committee. That's a position he already holds and makes sense with his chairing role. Appoints me to the Civil Defence Emergency Management Group for the Canterbury region, with the authority to appoint, if necessary, an elected member as the Mayor's alternative. Delegates to the Mayor and Deputy Mayor acting jointly any appointments to other joint committees should appointments be required before the next meeting of council. We think we've got them all, but we never know. We have agreed to establish a council organisation appointments panel for the purposes of recommending appointees to council organisations. I don't know what that means actually, because we've got most of the council organisations dealt with under CCHL, so. Well, what are council organisations? What are they?
Well, they're like the trusts. A council organisation is anything that the council has a right to make an appointment to.
Well, that's not a council. I mean, OCHT isn't a.
Most of them, there's an exception, but there is a whole, you know that list of external appointments that was stipulated to.
Yeah, I know, but
Many of those
I haven't.
organisations.
Okay, for the recommending appointments. So this is just recommending appointment. Okay, so just to other bodies. Well, I don't know what council organisations are. So appointees to
Other bodies.
Isn't that just directors? It's not just general appointees. That's only speaking to directors.
Eh? No, there's a separate one for directors. Okay, council okay, and other bodies. It's only a recommendation, so we just sit down, go through the list, and make a recommendation. So carry on down, scroll down.
That's it.
Oh, okay, right. And there's a separate paper on CCHL, Christchurch NZ, and Civic. Yes. Right. Okay. So, are there any quick questions? Andrew.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out you've got a list of people on that City Momentum Committee that we discussed informally earlier. My name seems to have got missed off there for some reason. That was one where we did discuss membership and we made a list of people. So that was the City Momentum Committee.
The Central City one?
Not the Central
No.
City, the City Momentum.
It's a committee, it's not a subcommittee.
No, it's a
Further up.
standing committee. Keep going. Up.
That's it? Yeah. So if I can just be added as a member there, that would be great. And then any other changes to membership
Oh,
can
no, I
be dealt
left you
with.
out deliberately.
Oh,
No, I didn't.
well, I'm back in again. So any other changes to membership, for example, that funding committee, they can be made at that subsequent meeting that we
Yeah.
just referred to. Yep, that's great. I'd got a question around the way that Part A's will be able to be dealt with if they come to a committee from the community boards, or the way that any matters arising out of community board reports that result in resolutions might be able to be dealt with. Given that my understanding is that a committee isn't able to make a recommendation to another committee, so I don't really know who I'm directing that question
Sorry,
to.
what is the explicit question?
So
This is in relation to...
So this is in relation to the terms of
Part A.
reference, and in particular the terms of reference for the Sustainability and Community Resilience Committee, where my understanding is from those terms of reference, the community boards will report to that committee.
Yeah.
They will report their Part A's to that committee.
Yep.
And any matters...
Oh, but one of the things that hasn't been picked up yet is my desire that that the chairs of the relevant committees then swap out, so that you get a chair. I mean, it's a committee of the whole, so you just simply morph into a committee of the other committees to deal with the Part A's, so you can deal with them on the same day. You just don't want community board members coming to one committee. I mean, we have the same problem the other way around. If you make it reporting to full council, we've already delegated the decisions to the committees of the whole.
So you'd have to refer them back.
So you'd have to refer them back. So you don't want to do that. So I don't want it to be referred. I actually want to create a model that works. And so I hadn't completed getting advice on that. So what I want is a mechanism to make that work, so that, because I'd like to keep the community boards reporting to the sustainability and community resilience one, because that whole partnership is linked to community resilience. So that partnership is linked in there, but also recognising that they have a significant role when it comes to decisions and the decisions will get greater, hopefully, delegated to the community boards themselves. So that's my ambition.
So just to
Oh,
clarify...
sorry, maybe the chief executive will tell me off.
No, I'm not going to do that, Madam Mayor, but I think that's a specific point that we do need to take away, Deputy Mayor, in terms of making sure the flows work so you get the decisions made at the right time in a timely manner. We're not asking community boards to come to lots of different meetings.
That's my concern,
So
that the community boards are respected.
Yeah, we will absolutely take that back and make sure that works.
So there are two issues in that regard, and I didn't get to the second one. So the first is the Part A's. The second is where the community board reports result in matters been raised and resolutions passed. So the way that we dealt with the seafarers' welfare issue from Banks Peninsula would be a good example of this. The committee, because it's a committee, won't have the ability to refer that resolution, as I understand it, to another committee.
But to the council they can.
But would we want it to go to the council if it was to be dealt with in a committee of the whole environment? So I think we just need to give this some thought.
We'll give it some thought.
It may be something that lands in a discussion, in that further discussion about the terms of reference. But, you know, I mean, the idea of people swapping in and out of the chair, on the one hand, sounds a little bit cumbersome, but if it avoids the community board chairs having to come back time and time again, that may be the solution. There may be another one. But this issue of when the community boards report, occasionally we will pass a resolution coming out of that report. We need to be able to ask for advice on that resolution and refer it somewhere. Would a committee be able to do that in the same way that council would?
But what we could do is make sure that there's a delegation to the committee that it can ask for a report. The report doesn't have to be reported back to the committee. If it's not relevant to the committee, it could be reported back to the council or to the urban development and transport or to, So, I mean, let's find a solution.
Yep.
An efficient and effective solution.
Yeah. Yep.
Great, thank you. And then, my other question was biodiversity. I would imagine belongs with the Environment Committee. There's a biodiversity fund.
There is a fund that sits with the other one, the sustainability.
And that relates particularly to biodiversity outcomes, sites of ecological significance, and other matters regarding areas of particular ecological interest, which I would imagine we would want aligned with the Environment Committee in any decision making that they would be doing around other wider biodiversity and environmental matters.
Sorry? Yeah, but does it...
It's a better fit with the environment.
But it's more around community, isn't it?
No.
It's about environmental outcomes.
It's less community. It's much more specific around ecological
all right.
sites
Well,
of significance.
can we move that item? The biodiversity fund transfers from the terms of reference from Three Waters and Environment to
from
sustainability,
to water.
to Three Waters. Yep. Sam.
So I'm just trying to clarify I personally support the community board chairs reporting directly to the council. Where in there would we vote on that, or where will we? Would I just vote against the terms of reference if that wasn't the case?
Well,
I'm just trying to understand.
I'm really keen to just trial it for a period of time. I want to go and talk to the community board chairs about what their views are.
Yeah, I guess if we were going to test that around the council, though, how do we vote against that today?
Could I just check the reason? Can I just ask? You clear view, but why would
Hang on. This is not appropriate. Sorry, I wasn't aware that...
Well, I think there might be a few more people around the table that are thinking that as well, so I don't think I'm alone.
Yeah, I just didn't want the council meeting to become the community board meeting. You know, it will. But you know, if that's the will of the council, then I can't do anything about it.
I think that's partly the whole point of the council and the community board to come together are being live streamed. I think it's actually quite important.
They are live streamed at the other one.
But the council, the committees of the whole are not council meeting, and I think it's important that the community board chairs present at the council meeting.
The whole council is there.
Why not, Leanne? Because I also agree with that. But why don't you just assume the chair for the community board component of that at the committee of the whole meeting?
No, I mean, if there's a general view around the table,
but
then I'm not going to push it.
Today.
You know, this is a council, and we are all mature enough. I just wish somebody had told me that was the wish of the meeting.
Specifically talked about
we had a discussion.
3 people raised it, not
Well, 2.
Yeah.
2 people raised it.
2 people.
Anyway, look, excuse me.
So we're not allowed to think about these overnight or anything? I mean, it's being brought up now, and I think it's important to bring it up now.
That's fine. What I would like to do is to get a resolution that people are generally comfortable with, and so I'm not going to make this a debating issue. So I'm going to simply change the terms of reference so that the council will receive the community board reports, and we'll trial that. And if that's if the community board chairs are uncomfortable with that or wish to change that, or I feel that it is diminishing the capacity of the one meeting that I will chair every month to actually address some of the major issues, then I will bring it back to council. So
why don't you just chair that component of it on that same day?
I'm not going to enter into a debate about it. I've just asked that the terms of reference be changed. This is my paper, and I'm going to try and helpfully get through the agenda in a way that resolves this issue without an extensive debate. So we all live to compromise on these matters, and there are bigger issues in front of us today, and nothing is going to deter me from that. So, Mike, you had a...
It'll be the biggest committee.
Look, I'm not going to have a committee of the whole. I'm not. So, I'm... Sorry? Are you on it? Eh? It is not a committee of the whole, but it's turning into one. So, who? Yeah. All right. Look, I'm just gonna. I'm just going to. Yeah. Look. Yeah. I'm sorry, but I'm just not going to appoint a large committee because we won't get the work done, and it's so important.
Why don't we be confirmed the membership?
I'm happy to come off. I'm happy to come off and have Mike on.
Okay, well, can we swap out? No, I need you there for other reasons.
Is it best governance to do this on the fly now? Why don't we do TBC, and then we can
look, replace.
Work that out then.
Can you leave Deputy Mayor Turner there and put members to TBC?
Yeah.
And then take out the balance. Yep, that's right. Okay, thank you. Sorry?
That's a small committee.
Melanie.
I just wanted to check with the youth committee that there's room for other councillors.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah. You are indicating that you'd like to be on it. Mm-hmm. Can we add Melanie's name in the meantime?
Yeah, I'd like to.
Yeah. And Yanni Johansson. So that's. Eh? Yeah, no, that's fine. And Yanni Johansson, put him on the multicultural and the youth one. All right. Sorry? No. All right. So, are there other questions?
So where are we up to with the community board reporting? Is it status quo as per your paper?
I just said that we were going to change the terms of reference.
Right. Okay. And then and then depending on how much extra time that takes, you'll review it then. So how do we fit all the community board reporting into one council meeting?
We can't.
We do now.
We're doing now. It takes about 3 hours.
So
So
it means that we have to
It means there's nothing else.
it's okay. It's all right. Yanni.
Amendments to terms of reference now, or how do you want to deal with that?
We'll go through the individual terms of reference. Are there any more questions on the overarching recommendations? Okay, so the terms of reference.
I just wonder whether, rather than get into a individual kind of discussion bit by bit today, whether there's an opportunity to spend some time actually going through it and refining it to get it to a place where
Look,
maybe people are more happy with.
All of this was sent out last week, and we did ask for feedback. So look, can we just say? I mean, the recommendation says that if there is any refinement that needs to be done, we've picked up the main changes that we need to make today. Can we just trust each other to be flexible around adjusting some of the terms of reference on a case-by-case basis once you're in your committees, to start to work up and go through those. I mean, you're not going to get any pushback from me around a sensible set of particularly negotiated changes. If it requires a change from one committee to another, or it's something that we've overlooked or something, then we can add
So,
it.
for example, like the social housing strategy, like I like your idea of having a special focus on social housing. I'm
Yep.
just sort of struggling to understand why we'd have two structures possibly going on at the same time,
Well-
or whether there's a better way to look at housing. But I mean, obviously, we're not going to have time to do
It's
that now.
up to the committee to decide what
Which is
they're
a committee of
going.
the full council, so it's the full council.
Yes, correct.
So
So, and it will be, I mean, that's chaired by Sarah Templeton. The deputy chair is sitting right next to you. And so I think that it is going to be up to them. What I have offered to do, and the reason I've offered to do it, is because I've made a campaign pledge around social housing, and I need us to have a proper reporting framework, because at the moment we don't have one. And I want to work very closely with staff, and I have an absolute assurance and commitment from staff that they want to achieve this as well. And we've got the Otatahi Community Housing Trust, which is very much a partner in all of this, and we need to get on with it. So that's all. It's not something that's acting at cross purposes. It's acting in parallel. It's positive. Phil.
So if I want to go on that social housing working group, now's the time to say it?
Yep.
oh, okay.
Hands up. I want a very small, focused working group. Can you put Phil Major on it?
I'm small, yeah. Compared to Anne, I'm quite short.
This is just the reporting framework, so I want it very targeted. Thank you. Right. Okay, so we've got a generic catch-all for the terms of reference and the memberships as well. So that's all good. Is there any other questions, Andrew?
Thank you. Just and it really is a question that may again require some further work. The funding committee, that is working just on the Metropolitan Strengthening Communities Fund at the moment. Is that correct?
That's the intention.
So the Events and Festivals Fund and the other funds that...
It'll be up to the committee to decide whether they delegate anything.
So with that being a subcommittee of the Committee of the Whole?
It's up to the committee to decide. They haven't made that, they haven't discussed it yet.
Right.
Yeah.
The funding, what is it called? Subcommittee, does that have delegated authority over the funding decision?
Not at this stage.
It goes up to...
That's the.
That's
I just
something
wanted
for the
clear, I just missed
committee
it.
to decide.
Right, okay, thank you.
Yeah, but we've
Reference.
essentially established it. I'll tell you what I'd hoped, and I'll tell you why it's as it is. What I'd hoped is that we could, for example, delegate the heritage funding to a group that simply made all of the decisions, and we fully delegated it to the group of the willing, those who wanted to be on it. I trust every single councillor around this table, and if we delegate an individual group to go away and make decisions on our behalf, that is one of the decisions I'm really happy to have. What the organisation didn't want to do was to set up a meeting structure that had one paper going to it just about every month. That is actually not an efficient use of resources. So, so I'm happy in the context of and this is what we need to work through as a committee. So under the leadership of the committee chair and deputy chair, I want us to look at whether we could simply make any of those reports subject to a delegation that exists on the day, and those that are part of the delegation can remain for the decision, and those of us who are willing to trust our fellow colleagues to make the decision on our behalf to leave. So, so there is a mechanism that we can create to do that. It doesn't have to be the same chair. You can delegate to a specific group to do that. That's what I'm told, but it doesn't mean the whole infrastructure that sits behind a committee exists for that purpose. So
we get multiple funding applications from the same groups to different funds, and there may be better ways of thinking about how we distribute funding across the board.
I agree entirely. I
but we need the
solve
time to
the
work
problem
that
in
through.
2
I agree.
weeks.
Yeah, so we just need some time to get that information,
Correct.
work it through, figure out maybe what's better structures.
Yes.
Because some of it may just go into the annual plan.
Yes.
As a line item.
I totally agree, and I mean you're absolutely nailed it exactly. That is what I want us to think about. What is the overarching approach that we want to take? All right. Right. So, well, I'd like to move the resolutions. Does anyone want to second them? Tim Scandrett. Is there any discussion? I'll put the motion. Yeah? Yeah. James?
Yeah, if I may. Yeah, I'm kind of two minds about this. I do see what's trying to be achieved with it, and I think that's good. But I am torn, and I'm not convinced necessarily that the committee structure is going to alleviate some of these fears or ensure that we're effective and efficient there. I would love to be proven wrong, and a part of me would actually just like to support this right now, because I think that we can review it, and I know that things aren't necessarily set in stone. But I think the thing that I keep coming back to is that the structure that we're operating under, and I go back to the functions or the intended functions of this council, we had a representation review which at the time myself and a number of others pushed back against adding more councillors, because we felt that at the time that it would potentially just add more cooks to the kitchen, or more committees, more speeches, more questions, less strategy, and potentially more people pleasing, and as a consequence that adversely affects both the effectiveness and efficiency of the city's governance, and that was concerning. But the main argument against that, to alleviate my fears, was that more councillors would stop the duplication, would stop all the councillors being spread so thin, and that those councillors would then be able to concentrate on key areas of focus that aligned with their area of interest and expertise. And that was something that I was very sceptical around. I don't think, in all honesty, that happened last term, and then going forward, I think that we need to have a structure that's cognizant of that, but tries to perhaps capture the original intent of what the representation was trying to achieve. So to put it another way, it would ensure that a specialised group would do the grunt work within those committees, or a smaller and more focused group, and that would be then sent to council. And then the controversial matters or major issues that everyone would like to drill into the detail of went directly to the council in that instance. Now, I don't believe that happened for one moment, Now, from here, we have a new committee structure being proposed that has a mass addition of committees of the whole, 4 in total, as well as the council, as well as a plethora of standing committees, 9, plus subcommittees, hearings panels, and working groups. So from my perspective, and my fear here is, and I hope that it doesn't come to fruition, but I struggle to see the streamlining with it. I think that all of these are going to require significant council resourcing, when, particularly staff. When the staff aren't there, they're not on the ground actually doing the work, they're serving elected members sitting in meetings, and I fear that we might potentially be embracing the worst of both worlds. So I would love to be proven wrong, though I'm just sceptical that this is going to help this council be more effective and more efficient. So I'll vote against it.
All right, Sarah.
Thank you. I'll be voting in favour of this. I think that one of the key issues that we've had in the last term was the issue of, smaller standing committees that were people who were really interested in the topics at ITE or social and community development and housing, going over issues, looking at things in depth, making a recommendation to council, where the other councillors around the table then relitigated everything that came from that committee because they hadn't had all of the information. And they may not necessarily have been as interested in those topics. And so the duplication at that point became incredibly frustrating. I think one of the things we need to make sure of is that as city councillors, there may be things that happen in the city we're not particularly interested in, but actually it's our job to know enough about them to make good decisions. And I don't think that that always happened in the last term, and I think that having committees of the whole over those key areas, community resilience, climate change, transport and urban development, 3 waters and environment, means that all councillors are over all of those issues and see how they affect each other across our city. And I think that that's what good governance does. And I think that if we only had smaller committees of the willing and interested, we wouldn't get that. Having all councillors having their heads around how and why we design cycleways, or how their communities build plan for resilience in an emergency is incredibly important, even though not every councillor will be really interested in it. So that's why I've been voting in favour.
Melanie and Andrew.
I was going to say exactly what Sarah said. So I support everything she said, and I'll be voting for it too for exactly those 2 reasons.
This is a different approach, and it's an approach that I want to see work. If this reduces relitigation, then that can only be a good thing. If it reduces duplication, it can only be a good thing. If it means that elected members are more engaged and more effective, then that can only be a good thing. And it will require commitment of everybody around the table, around engagement with the subjects of the papers that come in front of us, even though some of those will be more detailed and perhaps areas that in the previous structure committees would have dealt with a smaller number of people there. And it'll also require attendance. I'm mindful of what happened when the Central City Development Forum became a committee of the whole. But that speaks to the need for subcommittees, working parties, and other standing committees of council that are more specialised, that do allow for those groups of elected members, those groups of councillors that have got particular interests, whether geographic interests or particular areas of personal interest or skills and experience, where we can contribute as part of a smaller, more effective, more nimble group. And I think that's taken account of here as well. One part of this that I do particularly like, and this is in the context of the understanding on the part of our communities of how and when they can engage with council or with committees or with other bodies of council. And certainly one of the things that we have heard in previous surveys and engagements with the community is that people need to understand how best to engage with council, how to get the most out of that engagement. And one of the things that I particularly welcome in that regard is the consistent use of hearings panels. This is something that I and others have talked about for some time, and it's good to see it adopted in this model. If every time we go out for consultation that results in the creation of a hearings panel and a standard process that people understand, And if each hearing panel is created to be appropriate to each matter being considered, with the right number and the right skills and experience in the councillors at that table, the ability to have community board members as part of a hearings panel, the ability to have others as appropriate in the hearings panel constituted for the purpose. That means that the quality of the consideration of community submissions, the quality of the engagement with the community can only be improved versus a community member coming to the whole council or by deputation to a committee. Setting up a hearings panel for the purpose can only be a good thing. And certainly I see a part of my role with some oversight of those hearings panels have been making sure that we constitute each hearings panel as appropriately as we possibly can for the issue that we're dealing with, and also that we share the load across everybody sitting around this table as we create those panels as well. So I'm certainly very willing to give this a try. I want it to work. And I think if we are committed to it and we use it to best advantage, it will be workable, and there are a number of advantages here.
Yanni?
Yeah, thanks. I don't agree with the structure that's been proposed. I think actually we're going about this in the wrong way. I think what we really need to focus on is looking at what we want to achieve over this term and for the council, and then working out the best structure to do it. It feels like we're setting up a structure to then fit a work program into, rather than figuring out what we want to do and how we can best achieve it. In my experience, having committees of the whole effectively removes the standing committee process that signals to a community a direction that council wants to go in. And as someone who fought really hard to get standing committees reintroduced to council after the earthquake, one of the key reasons of doing that was to ensure that the public could follow the democratic process. My fear with this structure is that people will get about 2 days' notice of items coming in front of council, and there'll be very little time for people to meaningfully engage in those processes. The advantage of having the typical standing committee process is that people get awareness of it coming to a committee and then realising some time between when the final decision is made. I fear that this structure will not give us that. There are some good things in here that I do support, and that is the hearing panels, for example. I think that's a really important thing. I also think having focused working groups that are very clear about what they want to achieve and a resource to get that work done is very important. Fundamentally, though, we have far too many strategies and too many implementation plans that we still need to develop, and without a sense of what that work is, I don't believe we should be agreeing to a structure today.
So, Anne?
Thank you. I think this structure gives opportunity for voices to be heard that may not necessarily be heard, and I think that's a real strength. So I will be supporting the recommendations today.
Thank you. Right. So, well, I'll close off the debate then. I guess that one of the obvious risks about a desire to get on and get things done does reflect that perhaps I've misunderstood, or in all of my interviews and hearing what people's aspirations were, I thought that I'd developed a good understanding of what people wanted to achieve. The focus on finance and performance, a great structure that was developed as a committee of the whole that actually required every single councillor to read every single paper and to really get to grips with both the finances and the performance of the organisation. What a great model. And yet with the sustainability and community resilience stuff, the infrastructure, transport and environment stuff, we re-litigated issues over and over again. So you'd go off to a committee, you'd have that focused input, the general public would have a say at the committee, but they weren't making the decision. They only made a recommendation through to council, and then council re-litigated. And then the community said, how come no one listened to me? So that model didn't work, and I don't really apologise for 1 second for trying to find a model that actually gives others leadership capability. I don't have to chair every single council meeting for it to be a good decision-making process. I trust Sarah Templeton. I trust Andrew Turner. I trust Mike Davidson. I trust, who else have I appointed? Pauline Cotter, who
But I also trust Councillor Major, you know, Councillor Daniels, Councillor Coker, Councillor MacDonald. You've all got first names as well, I know. But I'm just reading it off the list so that I don't forget names. And I've got, you know, the youth advisory and the multicultural. I've got the sort of the civic aspects and the funding aspects. I've got the disability or the accessibility side of things covered off. I've got regulatory performance under the threat of all sorts of things if we dare to get into any risk areas around losing our accreditation ever again. I'm just repeating it in the public. The point is that if we don't trust each other to take leadership roles, and if we don't seriously bring together all of the capability that now sits around the table and use it to best advantage, then it's going to be same old, same old. So I'm sad that people are going to reject the model. And I know I've worked quickly. I've actually talked to every single one of you. So I'm you know, I really feel that somehow I've kind of failed in the sense that not everyone is across the line. I want you to trust me with this, at least for a year, just let it model. I'm happy to write on a recommendation where I can give you a public undertaking that we will review this after the annual plan goes through. So we've got an idea of how it's tracking, and which means that we've set the schedule for the year, but after the annual plan goes through, we then have a couple of weeks recess in July, so around the August period, we actually sit down and have some workshops around how the structures are working. I know that this will take the pressure off the organisation, you know, because to have efficient, effective decision making is actually in the interests of the organisation, and spending time supporting a committee which then makes a recommendation to council, which completely goes against the recommendation of the committee. I can't think of anything more soul-destroying in a person's career than to have to see that occur, especially when they've invested time and effort in engaging with the community about an approach which is understood to be acceptable. So I'm just going to say, can we trust each other with this? Can we review it? And I'm happy to give an absolute undertaking that we will review this after we've had a break after the first annual plan process, which will be enough to warrant a break, I can assure you. And then we will come back to this and look at how it's tracking. It may be that we will find a way of modifying how we run things. The ITI committee is now two separate committees. We did think of putting them on the same day, but actually part of the issue is the quantum of paper. And I even noticed with today's reports, you know, when you put in reports where you don't actually have to know every single element of every single bit of the business case, but make the business case available to those that want to deep dive into it. I've already talked to the Chief Executive about the nature of what decisions come to council. So it is going to be part of the organisation's responsibility to make sure that they reduce and make more effective the decision-making process. If people at committees of the whole, if they're bringing papers up that have not been in any way engaged with their community, then there's something wrong with the process, not the committee structure. So I want us to find a much better way of being open and engaged with our community so they have much more of a say in the direction that's taken. And I think I said this last week, and I'll repeat it again. We've got a representation review that's happening this time, and my recollection of what was said at the time is slightly different than one of the councillors. But to me, we've got an opportunity to set the structure up going forward in a far more progressive way.
using the representation review, but also using the opportunity that was mentioned to us, and that's potentially having an amendment to the legislative framework that enables us to have full local boards as opposed to community boards with delegated responsibility, but local boards that actually have budgets in their own right and can make real decisions on behalf of and with their local communities. So on that motion, on that point, I shall put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Those opposed say no. So can you hands up for no? So that's James, Yarni and Aaron.